It is live before lock here on Thursday afternoon, August the 20th, 2020. For breakdown this MLB slate. Alex, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. Apparently everyone faded Harden today. I didn't get the memo, so I'm not loving that. Looking forward to a clean slate here. How about you, man? How are you doing?
I did not fade Harden. I will tell you that right now. I guess I'm in the pretty much the mindset of as long as Russell Westbrook's not playing, I'm probably going to try to put Harden in every night because he could go off for 80 points at any given day in terms of DFS. So Harden's always going to be a play for me. But man, I'm doing good, man. It's been a busy day here in the office. Kind of going around town, getting my day done, man. But guy gave kudos. Saw the DraftKings Cribs edition of Alex Awesemo Baker. That was cool. Good to see that you have hung up that TV.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that was nice of them to produce that, and yeah, it's cool to be doing the show with you because I know you got the MMA show right after this. I'm gonna be watching that to get the picks for Saturday.
And then after that, I'm recording the Early Bird podcast. It's a night of DFS here in the Floyd household.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's about the past 4 hours putting all three of these shows together. Of course, we are here to talk about tonight's MLB slate. We got 8 games, all start at 7:05. Of course, this show is sponsored by Yahoo. We'll tell you a little bit more about Yahoo as we go on in the show. Obviously we want to talk about the pitching matchups, and I feel like there's probably no better place to talk about the pitching matchups but right at the first game of the night with the Indians and the Pirates and Shane Bieber, because, I mean, look, he's obviously we know what his salary is across all the platforms, $10,600 on DraftKings, $12,000 on FanDuel, $61 on Yahoo. SuperDraft, it's only one time, so not the great multiplier you would want there, but one of the interesting stats I saw with him is, of course, we know about his strikeouts this year through his first 5 starts, 54 strikeouts, tied with Nolan Ryan and Pedro Martinez for the third most of the first 5 starts in a season since 1906. What's your take on the salary here for him tonight in this spot against the Pirates?
Yeah, man, he's been putting up wild numbers, like you were saying, like some of the most strikeouts we've ever seen in the first 3 starts. I think his strikeout percentage is over 40% right now, which is just like ridiculous. So he's been on fire. He's got a matchup versus Pittsburgh, who they're not a great team right now. They're not great for strikeouts. So I think this is a really good spot for Bieber. But I don't know if we can count on him to rack up the Ks. But how are you feeling about Bieber tonight?
This is my fear. At what point is he going to have the bad game? Now, look, is it against the Pirates? I probably don't think so. I would think this is a good spot. I just think it's a matter of roster construction more than anything else. Do you want to pay up? Like, especially when we look at FanDuel at $12,000, do you want to pay up for him? Or, do you want to save some salary? And Lament, obviously, you look at our projections, he's, if not the highest owned pitcher, one of the highest owned pitchers. I know his percentage was a little lower on FanDuel as opposed to DraftKings, but like to me, I just think it comes down to how do you want to build your roster, whether you want to pay up for him or not.
Definitely. And tonight's slate is really interesting in that we don't have any teams that are projected to really put up a ton of runs. The highest run projection we have is Boston at 5.6. So the pitching tonight is way, way better than the bats. So it's an interesting slate where if you go with a Bieber, maybe you have to go for some bats that really aren't very good to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you wanted to be contrarian and go with a Pirate stack, you would definitely be contrarian. I mean, because you look at the price points on all these bats in that lineup. I mean, is there a favorite bat you have with the Pirates lineup tonight?
Wow, that's like dumpster diving tonight. I mean, like they're probably in the toughest spot of any team, but I do notice that maybe Eric Gonzalez leading off is cheap. That it's funny because like a lot of these guys in the Pirates lineup aren't even that cheap, and they're supposed to be really terrible. So On Yahoo, we got some $7 guys, but on DraftKings, they're expensive. So I don't think anyone's going to be on them. We have them projected for sub 1% ownership on DraftKings. And when they do go off, I guess you get a ton of leverage on the field. So that's at least something. But yeah, I think that it's going to be hard to find the Pirates tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Bieber for me is more along the lines of if he does go off and has a ginormous score, can you not have him in your lineup and still, cash in these big GPPs?
For sure, yeah. I think that is always an issue because if you pay a lot at pitcher, you get kind of that floor of your lineup way higher because bats are so volatile. So Bieber definitely is a great pick. I think as far as like versus salary, maybe Lament is a little bit better. And then we got some other great pitchers tonight too with Sonny Gray. We got Clayton Kershaw and of course Lament.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess Lament is a good way to go to next in terms of as we're talking about these pitchers, because if you look on DraftKings, some people may have that mindset in terms of roster construction of, let me just go with these guys. Let me go with Shane Bieber. Let me go with Lament. And that's going to be my two guys. And then I'm going to build my roster from that point on.
For sure, yeah. And Lament is cheap tonight, at least on DraftKings. He's only 8.1K, I think, or 8.5K. He's just way underpriced tonight. He's got the matchup versus the Rangers. They have a lot of Ks in their lineup. I project them to have about 8% more than your average team. And Lament is already a great strikeout pitcher. They're in San Diego. That's a great park for pitchers. So really, all the factors are working in Lamet's favor, whereas with Bieber, the park is average and the matchup, they don't have a lot of pop, but they don't strike out either. So I think Lament is really where I'm starting my lineups tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he was I know when I did one crunch earlier, it was pretty much all Lament was coming up in the fantasy cruncher. So, but I mean, obviously, I think the other side of that is, if you're in those big GPPs, if you're looking to get away from those two pitchers, maybe Clayton Kershaw is the guy you turn to.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because Clayton Kershaw, he's won us all so much money playing fantasy baseball over the years. It just hasn't been recently. But maybe you can turn it back on. He's expensive, more expensive than Lament on every site. And the worry with Kershaw is he's just not going quite as deep in games as you'd like him. Kind of in the 80 to 90 pitch range, I believe, for the first few starts. So that makes him a little bit more expensive. But he has a great matchup too going against Seattle. They're one of our favorite teams to pick on with pitchers. So I have Seattle projected to strike out about 10% more than your average team. And in 2020, that's a lot.
Yeah, when you look at obviously Kershaw had that great performance the last one, and I think the thing that really stuck out to me about more than anything else is a dozen ground ball outs that he got.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes him such a great pitcher is he limits the production. The metrics so far this year have been good. His xFIP is 2.5, so that's encouraging. That levels off a little bit quicker than ERA. So I think that he stands out as a great pitcher in a great matchup. It's just that the price per pitch is a little bit higher than the other guys.
You mentioned about Sonny Gray as another high-end pitching option tonight. 9,500 on DK, 8,700 on FanDuel, 1.45 multiplier on SuperDraft, and $57 over at Yahoo. I mean, obviously, he could be a guy that looking at what we have projected ownership for Sonny Gray, we have a 17% right now.
Yeah, he's got a tougher matchup versus the Cardinals, and that I guess they're about average team, I'd say, as far as the bats. He's just not quite as good a pitcher as Bieber, and the price really isn't that much of a discount. So he's kind of that sneaky option, and I I mean, his ownership is going to be less than half of Lament potentially. So Sonny Gray could be one way to get a great pitcher at a discounted ownership just because there's so many good options.
In terms of when you look at that Cardinals lineup, is there a bat in that lineup that scares you going up against Sonny Gray?
Well, I mean, Goldschmidt, Carpenter, like these guys, they've seen better days, but they still got some decent skills. I know for the first 5 bats are lefty, so they got the good platoon splits. But Brad Miller, he's been the one getting all the power this year. His ISO is 50% and average is 43%. So I mean, he's been I don't know how much he's played, but he's been on fire. Not that I'm really like considering that. It looks like over 16 at bats, he has 2 homers and a couple other extra base hits. So he's been off to a really fast start here.
I mean, looking at Goldschmidt, 5,100 on DK and 3,600 on FanDuel. I guess on the DK side, that price a little too high for you? Do you think it should be, it's about right? What's kind of your take on Goldschmidt with that price?
Yeah, price 5,100 versus Sonny Gray. That is insane. Like he's gonna really be a contrarian play because first of all, he just hasn't been that good over the past season, and then you have him against a tough matchup as well. So not really someone that's a high percentage play, but I mean maybe he'll be sneaky.
Looking kind of as go down with some of the top, salary pitchers. Berrios going for the Twins. He's at 9,000 on DK, 8,700 on FanDuel, going up against Brandon Woodruff and the Brewers. Berrios. I guess the one question you kind of have with him is, he's coming off a game where he had 4 walks and kind of allowing more runners on base could potentially give those Brewers bats some more opportunities. I know when I was crunched some lineups, Ryan Braun was coming up in some crunches for me. Obviously, Christian Yelich is always going to be someone that you're always going to look at.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the weather in Minneapolis tonight is 81 degrees, 67% humidity. So that definitely looks pretty encouraging for the bats. And we have Milwaukee being pretty cheap tonight. So I feel like if there's going to be a lot of lineups tonight where they pay up for 2 stud pitchers and then they go with the Brewers bats. So they might be a little bit overowned, but that doesn't mean they're bad play. But how are you feeling about the Brew Crew here?
See, here's what scares me about Woodruff. Obviously, he had a great start to his last appearance, got off that no-hitter, but then it went to shambles once he gave that first hit. So that kind of scares me. I mean, look, it's you look at that Twins lineup. I mean, to me, it's like, man, I really necessarily don't want to have a pitcher go up against that lineup because you just know, I mean, because of, their abilities to hit the home runs. I mean, we'll give our home run picks here later on in the show. I mean, they're a team you're going to look at, and Nelson Cruz is always going to be a guy that you're going to look at. You just look at that, 1 through 5 order for the Twins, and it's just, man, I would feel uncomfortable having Woodruff going up against those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Woodruff, he might be another sneaky guy tonight because he does have that tough matchup. As you mentioned, the Twins lineup's pretty tough at the start. The first 5 guys. After that, the quality of player drops way off. They do have this new rookie, Ryan Jeffers, batting 9th tonight. Not someone I'm going to consider in fantasy, but he looks like just below average power, not really stolen base upside. So that's basically a dead spot. So I think that Woodruff, he could get it going versus the back part of the Twins lineup. So it kind of balances out having those tough guys at the first 5 versus the rest of the crew.
Yeah, I never like rostering someone who's batting 8th or 9th It's a rarity that I'm going to put someone down there just because you may not get, those 4 or maybe even 5 at bats if the bats can get going. Of course, today's show is sponsored by Yahoo, the most trusted name in fantasy sports. We've all played with Yahoo over the years, and they now have Yahoo DFS, which includes CSV upload and CSV edit features when you're looking to play with those multiple lineups, which look, we're all playing those multiple lineups. We see Alex over there crunching all those lineups, putting all those multiple lineups in. Of course, you got to choose Yahoo Daily Fantasy, make better choices. And when you look over at Yahoo and the pricing over there, we just mentioned about Berrios, $35 on Yahoo. As you are thinking about, more like for instance, you got to pay double that to get up to Shane Bieber. Is he, on the Yahoo side of things, is he a value pitcher that intrigues you at all?
Yeah, I mean, $35, that's pretty cheap for Berrios. FanDuel has him at 8,700, DraftKings at 9K. So you get him at a way discounted price on Yahoo, and that makes him a way better play because this Brewers lineup is tough. They have a lot of power. Kind of the same situation where the top of the order is pretty strong, the bottom is kind of weak. But the consistent thing in the Brewers lineup tonight is they don't have a lot of easy Ks. Really, Keston Hero is the only guy that strikes out significantly more than average. And Berrios isn't a great strikeout pitcher either. So I think that he doesn't look like a great play, but at that price on Yahoo, that's the nice thing about playing there is you can get access to some different guys.
You mentioned about the implied run total for the Red Sox tonight a little earlier, and of course they're taking on the Orioles. Evaldi going for the Red Sox, and I just call him Woj because I'm not trying to say that long name and probably butcher it. I don't know if you know how to properly pronounce that without you. Like you look at it, and I could probably phonetically do it, but I just say Woj.
Yeah, I just call him Asher W, so I'm with you.
Obviously you mentioned earlier about the implied run total for the Red Sox. Obviously, I know when I was putting lineups, I was looking at a Red Sox stack, especially with their outfielders in this spot. But in terms of the pitching matchup, what's kind of your take on both sides of this?
Yeah, I think Asher W. He's or Woj. He's a guy that he seems like an interesting prospect because he has decent strikeouts. He's at 22% on the year, which that's good. It's not going to blow anyone's socks off, but it's all about the matchup. It's interesting though because the Red Sox have really been rolling out a bad team this year, but tonight their lineup looks really strong. Just a lot of power. The only guy who doesn't have power is the 9-hitter, Braza. And they also don't strike out, which is an unusual combination. So Woj might be a little bit off my radar tonight, but he's going to be sneaky. Nathan Eovaldi, though, he looks like a nice play.
Yeah, if beginning of the season you would have said after 24 games that the Orioles would be 6 games better than the Red Sox, I don't think anyone would have believed you.
I know, yeah. I was shocked at how the Red Sox have been doing so far this year. It's interesting, man, because it seemed like they had such a stacked roster only a year ago.
We haven't mentioned the 2 later games here on the slate, which is the D-backs and Athletics and the Angels and the Giants. Angels have Suarez making a season debut. I did notice on MLB.com expecting that 5 innings pitch is kind of the target there. We'll see if he gets there or not. Taking on Gausman there. Sean Manaea going for the Athletics up against the D-backs and Youngs. Sean Manaea is one of those pitchers, 8,100 on DK, 6,300 on FanDuel.
Yeah, 6,300 on FanDuel. That piques my interest. Manaea, he's a guy that it seems like he should get the strikeouts, but this year, underperforming, certainly. He's going up against the Diamondbacks. They don't strike out either. So maybe not a high percentage play, but he's definitely a pitcher, Manaea, that we should be on the lookout for.
I know I saw some people in the chat talking about Gausman and whether maybe he was kind of that, someone to pivot to.
Yeah. Gaussman, he's cheap tonight, 6,500 on DraftKings. He does, he's been getting like crazy strikeouts this year so far, 32%. Obviously, they haven't played a ton of games yet, but that is a good sign. The Angels lineup we don't have confirmed yet, but they're not a team that really strikes out a ton. So he's kind of the mix of guys that if you want a cheap flyer, then maybe Gaussman would be the guy that meets that.
Speaking of bats tonight, and I know we were mentioning it right before we came on, and I saw some people in the YouTube chat talking about this guy, and that's Joey Bart, the catcher for the Giants, a cheap play here. People, I know when looking at our ownership projections, we've got him as the highest owned bat on DraftKings, and at 2,600, obviously, people are going to look at him there, and he's not one of the top options on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's an interesting prospect. I think he jumped from AA to MLB this year. He was number 2 overall pick previously. He's just really cheap at 2,600, and he has good power for a catcher. He also steals some bases, which is unusual for a catcher. So definitely got to keep an eye out for. And he's got the platoon split advantage versus Suarez, righty versus lefty, so that's positive. So really no reason to not like Joey Bart tonight, except that it's baseball. And when you got a really popular batter, especially one that's not like an amazing player, just a good one, that seems like a situation where you could take a stand.
Yeah, he's not even on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think, that makes it interesting for stacking the team, I guess, because on FanDuel, the Giants are all cheap. They actually have a good total of 4.8. That's a little bit, it's sub 5, so not like particularly inspiring, but they do have matchup for Suarez first start of the year, so that could be interesting.
Yeah, we can kind of transition into stacks. I know when I was, looking at potential stacks, Red Sox were coming up a lot for me. Indians were coming up for me as well. I think how much that's going up against Trevor Williams on 6 days rest. How much? I mean, obviously they have a great lineup, but how much it also plays into when they're playing the Pirates.
Yeah, I think the Indians are certainly a good team. The interesting thing about tonight's slate is that none of the teams are really projected to be great options for bats. And the highest is the Red Sox at 5.6 runs, which really in 2020 is not that much. So I'm kind of seeing this as an opportunity to maybe find some leverage in other spots. So Cleveland, they could do great out as a really good play tonight for me. 9.6% chance of being the top stack, 7% ownership. So they're definitely a team I want to be looking at. And there's some other teams I really like as well.
Yeah, that Boston stack. I was looking at a 1-2-3 stack with Alex, Raphael, and JD.
Nice. Yeah. Boston, they're the highest projected team today. So certainly a great option. And Verdugo, Rafael, Martinez, they all have good power. So that seems like a good option. I noticed that Boston's actually pretty expensive today in the DraftKings and FanDuel to a lesser extent. But Alex Verdugo is by far the best value play, which is kind of a gift and a curse because he's going to be the highest owned because he kind of makes that stack work. But he's also not the greatest player in that lineup. So that could be another spot where maybe you could take a stand.
Another the second number 2 stack we have right now is the Dodgers. Now, obviously, the Dodgers, you're always going to pay up. I mean, with how Mookie Betts is playing, I mean, he got the big contract and that bat is still going strong. He's leading off tonight. AJ Pollock in the 2-hole. Obviously there's certain names people are always going to look at in the Dodgers, but is there a Dodgers stack that you kind of like that maybe people aren't thinking about?
So I will mention, I noticed when I crunched on DraftKings, I was getting and FanDuel, I'm getting the Dodgers as my highest owned stack on DraftKings and second on FanDuel, the Boston. So I think they're going to be really, really popular tonight, and that is certainly warranted because they just have insane power throughout the whole lineup. So I think they're great. It is a situation where it might be hard to find that edge over the field, though. But I see that maybe going to Max Muncy and Justin Turner, who are priced up a little bit, and maybe fading Chris Taylor and Pollock, that could be one way to maybe have a lineup that's a little bit more unique.
Some other teams we necessarily haven't talked about that we have up there in the top stack percentage, which, by the way, you got to go over there and check it out at awesemo.com. It's tools I use every day that Alex puts together. There's a reason this has made him the number one DFS fantasy player out there. But how about the Oakland A's?
Yeah, I think they're going to be sneaky tonight. The park, not great. Obviously, in Oakland, a little bit cooler than your average city. But they got good power, about 15% more extra bases than your average team. So I think given the fact they're not cheap either, I think they could really go overlooked today. Going up against Alex Young, who he's been having a good season so far, but he doesn't have really a track record to speak of. So I'm definitely going to be looking at Oakland today.
The A's is where my homer pick is coming from.
Nice. So I'm excited to hear who that is because apparently you got a few of them.
I wrote down four players just in case you kind of started taking some of my thunder. Give me Matt Chapman.
I like it, man. He's got 25% ISO so far. That's my projection for his ISO. He's at 28.7 over the season. So he's been really crushing the ball. A little bit more inconsistent, only 23.238 average, but definitely a guy that's going to hit homers a lot.
You got a home run pick for me?
Yeah. I've had more luck picking the really good players, but maybe I'll mix it up today and pick Joey Bart. He's that catcher that is making his MLB debut, and that's just that narrative you gotta love. Where the first time stepping to the plate, maybe he starts his career off hot, and that could up me in the standings here for our home run contest.
Watch he goes out, get a home run the first at bat, second at bat gets like a single, then he steals second base.
Well, I don't care about any of that. I just want that homer for our standings.
One of the teams I really haven't talked about it, and Matthew had asked about this, was whether we liked any of the Arizona bats.
Yeah, that's a great question. I see they're going up against Sean Manaea, who he's above average pitcher, but not significantly. The park's not great, but they have a lot of talented batters. So that's kind of that X factor. And I don't think they're going to be super owned today. So I do like going to Arizona as a sneakier stack.
I mean, obviously the Martes are your most expensive bats, whether we're talking about DK or FanDuel. DK, they're both 4,000 over on FanDuel, 35 and 33 for Starling Marte in that spot. But like as I look at the rest of that lineup, maybe it's a David Peralta type who you might see some better pitches just hitting behind the Martes.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, bounces out a little bit because maybe fewer plate appearances, but they have a really balanced lineup where every guy has just a little bit better than average stats. So really what I'm going to be looking at is trying to make a lineup that has a unique edge. David Peralta, he's got that lefty-lefty matchup. So I think people might be off him. That is a tough matchup for power. On average, lefty, they get about 75 or 25% less extra bases. So not a great matchup, but maybe that'll scare people off.
I saw someone over in the premium Slack saying, is tonight finally the night that Carlos Santana goes off, batting number 4 in that Indians lineup? He's batting 197 on the year, 3 homers, 12 RBIs. In season-long leagues, I would tell you, I feel like I have Carlos Santana every year.
Yeah, I mean,
some way he makes it on my roster, whether I draft him or I trade for him. If he has like a week of like 3 homers, and then he does nothing the rest of the year.
He seems like that kind of the guy that people say doesn't have upside because he's been in the league so long, and we know what to expect. But he's got good power, and in MLB DFS, getting those homers are king. So I'm not worried about that average.
Yeah, I mean, I guess thing is you look at his DK price, 4,100, 3,000 on FanDuel. To me, it's just like you said, is he going to hit that home run? Because if he hits a home run, you're happy.
Sure. I mean, that's especially important because he plays first base, or at least that's his position on the site. So you really need a lot of power from that particular position. So I do like him because maybe the game log watchers are going to be off him, and he's in a great stack versus Trevor Williams, who's certainly just an average pitcher. So I definitely like Carlos Santana.
A lot of people in the YouTube chat are talking about Shane Bieber and just kind of the projection of how many points that he could potentially go out there and get tonight.
Yeah.
The question is can he get over 30?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely is possible. The one thing I'd say is that, he has a 40% strikeout rate so far this year, but we know as baseball junkies that no pitcher can have 40% strikeouts over a whole season. So if you project him to be a really excellent strikeout pitcher at 33%, which is where I have him projected, and he's facing a team in the Pirates that not quite as easy to strike out as your average team, I have more modest expectations for him tonight, but that doesn't mean he's not doing this play.
Let's say I go the over-under strikeouts for him tonight, 8.5. Where are you going?
I would go under. I mean, I have him at 7.7, and that's an exceptional number. That means he's striking out more than a quarter of the batters he's going to face. But that's getting me to believe he's a good play, but not a must play.
Did Diver's salary on FanDuel at 2,800 stick out to you like it did to me?
Yeah, I mean he's on the top stack of the night, the Boston Red Sox, going up against Asher Woj. So you gotta like Devers, but he's the most popular player on FanDuel in that stack, and on Yahoo as well at $12. We have him projected for 47% ownership, which is insane. So the way I approach it is I'm trying to get as many of the projected points as I can for my staff. And with the Red Sox, they're pretty evenly spread out. Devers is my second highest projected, but not that much higher than guys like Moreland, like Pilar, Verdugo. So I might make some lineups where I just have the Red Sox stack, but I'll leave off maybe Verdugo and Devers because they're the most popular players.
Of course, one of those tools that I love using is Fantasy Cruncher all the time. Help building those lineups, and we mentioned about what you can do with Yahoo with the CSV edit and upload features, putting it in there. What are you seeing in your crunches right now? Of maybe is there a stack you're surprised it's coming up as much as it is?
Yeah. Well, I notice I'm looking at my DraftKings crunch right now. I'm noticing I'm getting a lot of the Milwaukee bets. And that's concerning because they are going up against Berrios. The weather is favorable, but I know they're not in the greatest spot. So if they're coming up a ton on my crunch, I assume that's going to happen for everyone because we all use projections that are fairly similar. And that to me means maybe I'll fade Milwaukee just because I know not the optimal spot, and it's just a way you can cram in some expensive pitchers. But what lineup construction are you getting on the contrary here?
I will tell you, whose name is coming up a lot? Wilmer Flores of the Giants.
Really? That's not what I was expecting.
No, I'm doing a FanDuel crunch right now. So Rafael Divers is coming up big. Lamet's coming up big. Yelich is coming up big. A lot of the Red Sox is coming up. I'm not seeing Reds really come up, and I know that was one of the questions about a couple people in the YouTube chat talking about that, of just basically how they're thinking the Reds look kind of decent tonight from a Pats perspective.
The Reds going up against Wainwright. He actually wasn't terrible last year, which was surprising because he's been in the league so long. 4.6 xFIP this year. That means a little bit below average so far. And the Reds, they got a lot of power bats, so kind of like it. They're not really popping as far as value, so that kind of makes me think maybe you can get Votto and Castellanos at reduced ownership tonight.
Another name that was coming up in some crunch for me on the FanDuel side of things, AJ Pollock batting in the 2-hole for the Dodgers, right behind Mookie Betts. I would tell you and I always like having a bat that's right behind that star bat because if they're going to pitch around the star, the guy that's behind him is going to get some good pitches.
Yeah, that is definitely true. So, Pollock, he's really cheap tonight on a really strong team, a good matchup. So he's a great play, and I'm just worried about the ownership.
I know a couple people are mentioning this, and I think it's definitely something you got to note about the Angels and Giants game tonight in San Fran. The wind is blowing out to center field. On the MLB app, they have it as 18 miles an hour.
Wow. That sounds like pretty crazy wind. The place I look really is sportsbooks because obviously they're always being bet by these sharps that are looking into all the weather factors. And I see that the over-under for this game is 9. You got average pitchers with Suarez and Gausman. Now 9's high for the San Francisco, being a colder park, but that's not really making me think that this wind's going to be a huge factor.
Speaking of FanDuel pricing, someone had mentioned about Mike Moustakas, who's at 3,000. Vice versa on DraftKings, he's 4,800.
Nice. I'm so far behind that I'm like, is Kansas City on the slate? But all right, on Cincinnati now. But he's really expensive on DraftKings at 4,800. He's been having a good season so far. And maybe if you're stacking up the Reds, just paying up for Moustakas, that'll make your line a little bit sneakier. But on FanDuel, he's cheaper and a good play for sure.
Over on the premium Slack, Jeff saying, who's better point per dollar on FanDuel, Bieber or Lament?
Yeah, that's a good question. Lament is more expensive on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings at 9,400 versus 10. Versus 8,500. And Lament, I have a 3.9 points per dollar, and then Bieber I have at 3.4. So Bieber has a much higher projection. So if you're just optimizing, you'll probably get more Bieber, but spending down and getting the lower projected, lower price bat, that helps you build a line that's more differentiated from the field. So I like that too. But who would you go with, Bieber or Lament?
Well, I mean, right now I'm looking at the ownership on FanDuel since that's what the question was about. We got Bieber at 19.6 and Lament at 20.8. I just look at it and I say, yes, I got to pay up higher for Bieber, but I just feel the ceiling is much higher with him.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, Bieber has been like the superior pitcher this year, so he's definitely like the top ace of the night. And Lament, he's really got that great matchup versus Texas. So I think that Lament, he's kind of the guy that is going to pitch better than average tonight. So I like both of them.
In terms of some other things that we haven't necessarily gotten to, I feel like we haven't talked about the Rangers at all.
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers are going to be a great spot to get leverage over the field because they are going up against Lament. They've been really bad this year, and they strike out a lot. The one thing they do well is they have power, and that's mitigated to some extent in San Diego because of the park. But you always love taking that sack against the popular pitcher because you don't need as many points to get a big score when you hit it, because everyone else is going to have a lower score. So that's definitely something I look at. In fact, I had a ton of the Tigers yesterday going up against Dunn just because Dunn was so popular. So that's definitely a strategy I go to a lot. I don't know if Texas is the best spot because they are projected to do really poorly today, but I think it could be sneaky. How do you feel about Texas?
Joey Gallo was one of the names on the list to go deep today.
Nice. So you made your short list.
Yeah, he made the short list. I also had Betts and Ramirez on the list.
Nice.
I mean, they're a little higher price guys, but those are the ones I feel comfortable with.
I mean,
by the way, the Angels still have not put their lineup out. And I know people mentioned this with what the wind are expected to be for this game. Mike Trout's going to be an interesting, if you want to pay up for Mike Trout.
Definitely. I mean, paying up for Mike Trout always is a great play. He's the best batter in baseball for sure. 37% ISO on the year. That is insane. The park, though, it's kind of interesting because, as you mentioned, they got the wind, but San Francisco is typically a pretty good pitcher's park. So I do have Trout as kind of a bad value, being so expensive, 6,200 on DraftKings. So I'm kind of wondering if I'll get to him, but he's definitely a good home run hitter, and maybe his ownership would be a little bit lower tonight than usual.
I think the question is if you want to put Bieber, Kershaw, or Gray in your DraftKings lineup, how do you put Trout at 6,200 in your lineup?
Right. Yeah, and that's when you start having to look at those lower price pitchers. So, I mean, we have a tradition, Jason, the Paul Blackburn pitcher of the night. I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Blackburn, but one day one of our guys called him as a play, and he went out and got like 40 points or something. Even though he gets like 10% strikeouts. So what's the cheap guy you're looking at tonight?
Let's look at all the cheap guys here. God, do I dare say Nathan Eovaldi?
I like Nathan Eovaldi a lot. I mean, what are you seeing?
A lot of it's going up against that Orioles team. And look, we know baseball, it's ebb and flows, even when we're talking about a 60-game season. When you look at that Red Sox team, you would find it hard to believe that they're going to continue on this pace. I mean, look, their pitching's been awful. I think we've seen it with what the Rays have done to them, what the Yankees have done to them. But when I look at 5,900 on DK, if you want to put him in an SP2 spot and then slide him up there with one of those top pitchers, to help you save a little salary relief in constructing your roster.
Definitely. I think Eovaldi is a great play. I'm actually surprised that maybe he's not going to be as high owned as I thought. We have him at 15% ownership, but he's got the great matchup versus Baltimore. He's been averaging strikeouts this year, but he's 5,900, and you gotta like that price. That'll help you get to Trout, get to some other good bats. The guy I'm looking at here, I kind of wonder if you say Kikuchi could be a good contrarian play. He's pitching against the Dodgers.
God, he burned me like 2 starts ago.
Yeah, this is he'll probably burn all of us that have him. But I see like 1% ownership, actually 0.3%. I think it'll be a little bit higher than that. But at 5,700, he's probably one of the last guys on the list. But he goes deep in games. He's facing the total chalk team of the Dodgers. I don't love picking leverage pitchers, but if they're not bad plays, like Kikuchi, have him a little bit worse than 2x points per dollar, then that's something I'm going to consider. So am I totally crazy here?
Of course, you've heard us talk about the great premium tools we have over Awesemo.com. Got to let you know today's premium tool that's available is an MLB Stacks tool. You got to check that out. Of course, if you want to get all these tools that Alex uses every day, I'm looking at every day. Get an Awesemo Plus MLB weekly pass for $15.95. That gets you player projections, ownership projections, the top pitchers tool, and more. I'm always looking. Ownership is probably the first thing I always look at. Then I go over to Stack tool. Then I go over to pitcher tool. What's kind of is there one above the other of those tools that you're looking at immediately?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Stacks tool, because that's kind of how I build my lineup. If I'm hand building, is I pick what stack I want, and then I try to build the best lineup around that. And I'm glad that this is free because we can talk about all what's in the top stacks tonight. So what I'm seeing here is that LA 16% of all the ownership, and that's higher than their chance of being the top stack. So maybe that's the spot where I want to go to get more leverage by going to a team like Oakland and Cincinnati that have 5% ownership but an 8% chance of being the top stack. And that right from the get-go gives you an angle where you're going to be able to take on the competition and win.
Yeah, I mean, as I look at that top stack tool, it's like if you look at, say the bottom 5, so, and one of the bottom 5 is Minnesota.
Yeah. I mean, they're an interesting stack. Like in Milwaukee, they got great pitching. And it's not just a starting pitcher, Woodruff. They got a great bullpen. But we see it all the time in baseball that if a team gets past that first pitcher, they're going to see the weakest arms in the bullpen because that's when they trot out like the back of the roster. So I don't hate the Minnesota stack. They got enough talent to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, I know people are asking about the Angels in their lineup. Yeah, they still have not put that lineup out there. Just looked at their PR Twitter account. There is nothing that has been put out there. So that is, and obviously everyone's kind of wondering what that lineup could be because that's the only lineup that we don't know of right now.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's not like the hugest deal in the world because you can late swap. So I'm always ready to make some late swaps because you don't have a line to a lock, and you can't just crunch your lineup 5 minutes before a lock and expect it to be the best lineup you can make. So, I mean, it's nice to have all the lineups, but it's kind of what we deal with Angels on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I will say about living here on the East Coast with this 60-game season. We don't necessarily have those 10:05, 10:30 games anymore. So that is the kind of the nice thing to pay attention there into that. In terms of, I know one of the players that came up in some of the stacks I did was Fernando Tatis, which, I guess he's not making many friends is about the best way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, like, how could he swing at that pitch? That was horrible. It was like the worst thing I've seen in 2020.
How about him stealing third when they're up 6-0?
Yeah, right after that too, right? Like a couple days after. So you gotta love how this guy's trying to run up the fantasy totals.
I don't know if it was a fake video or not. I saw it come across my timeline, I want to say yesterday, of him walking to the plate and the song playing was Justin Timberlake, Cry Me a River. If that's real, that is amazing.
You gotta love it. I mean, he's writing the rules in MLB. He's not breaking them.
Hey, look, if you're in a Padres organization, like, keep doing what you're doing.
For sure, man. They're an exciting team now. They got some good arms. They got some good bats. So they're up and coming.
I know we talked about this player a little earlier, but someone asked a question about Clayton Kershaw. And, obviously you look over, 10-2 on DraftKings, 10-1 on FanDuel, a 1.55 times multiplier on SuperDraft. As you look at, obviously, FanDuel, DraftKings is essentially the same pricing. Do you maybe prefer him a little bit more on SuperDraft because of that multiplier?
So, yeah, I mean, that multiplier is insane for Kershaw on SuperDraft. So he'd be like the top option, I'm pretty sure. And the one thing I'm thinking with Kershaw is just that our ownership projections have him as being a lot more popular than I would have thought at 34%. Because we know he's not. He's a step behind Bieber, and his pitch count isn't quite as high as some of the other guys. So, kind of wondering if that's worth going to. But how are you feeling about Kershaw versus Lament and Bieber?
I would prefer Lament over Kershaw. You brought up a great point a little bit earlier about how deep in the game could Kershaw go. I think that plays into it. I mean, look. If you got the salary room and it's between Bieber and Kershaw, why would you not go up? Why would you just not pay the additional $400 on DraftKings? Because to me, the ceiling is so much higher for him.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's got way better strikeout stuff at this point, Bieber over Kershaw. So you gotta think that Bieber is the much better play tonight.
Yeah, I mean, kind of as I doing a little crunch here just on FanDuel, just kind of seeing what's coming up. I know you're working over there on the DraftKings side of things. Boston stack is coming up. Indian stack is coming up for me. Is there a stack that's coming up for you that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, I think let me pull my stacks tool because that is a nice resource. So I actually see that Texas, they have a 3.5% chance of being in the top stack. That's about half of your average team. But that the thing I like is the leverage because they're going up against Lament, and you're going to take out a lot of lineups if the Rangers do well tonight. So that could be one strategy that could be worth exploring.
Of course, we're just about 10 minutes before everyone's lineups are going to lock here. 7:05 first pitch coming up here. Got a couple games going to kick off right there at 7:05. One of those is the Indians and the Pirates, also the Dodgers and the Mariners. I guess we've talked a lot about the Dodgers, but I mean, contrarian Mariners bats.
Yeah, I mean, I've been ending up with more Mariners than I would think, like pretty much on a regular basis. So it wouldn't surprise me if I have some today. Now going up against Kershaw, that's not a great spot because he's gonna. I mean, he doesn't have bad control or weak stuff, so a tough matchup. But yeah, maybe this time tonight because another downside is Seattle's the home team. That's one less inning you get if they're having a good game.
I know we mentioned about Pollock a little earlier, and you mentioned about his ownership is going to be high, but it might be someone still kind of tough to pass up though.
Yeah, I mean the interesting thing about the sites is they limit you to 5 bats on DraftKings, 6 on Yahoo, and 4 on FanDuel, and what that means is you basically have to get the 5 highest scoring guys, or 4. And the odds that Pollock is one of those when the sack goes off are pretty high, but his ownership is going to be the highest on the team as well. So I don't mind leaving him out of the lineup if I'm trying to get different. But the guy that really jumps out at me in the Dodgers lineup is Chris Taylor. He's batting fifth. He's a guy that doesn't have great power. He doesn't really steal a ton of bags, but he's cheap. And I think a lot of people are going to pick Chris Taylor. So that could be a better way to mix it up.
I guess for the people who are joining us late, as we did kind of beginning of the show, talk a lot about Shane Bieber and Lament, kind of obviously, DK, maybe you want to go with both those guys, FanDuel, maybe choose one or the other. For the people that are just joining into the show, kind of, rehash on exactly what you kind of think about both these sides. I mean, obviously I've talked about, Shane and, the upside he has, but, you have to pay up for him.
Yeah, I think Shane Bieber, he's the best pitcher on the slate. The negative of Bieber tonight is that he's up against the Pirates. They're not a great team, but they don't strike out a lot either. Whereas Lament and Kershaw have much better matchups versus Seattle and versus Texas. So that's kind of leveling the playing field to some extent. And that's kind of making them land more on the net because he is more favorably priced. And I mean, he's a tremendous pitcher. And I'm hoping that matchup versus Texas puts him over Bieber a decent amount of time.
You were still talking a lot about AJ Pollock there in the chat. In terms of, looking at, can Seattle's pitching stop the Dodgers bats?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, Kikuchi's been off to a decent start this year, but Seattle is probably one of the weakest teams in the league. So probably not. The Dodgers are big favorites in this one, but it's baseball. Anything can happen. So it is worth making lineups, anticipating things that might be more unlikely. One of those being that you say Kikuchi completely shuts down the Dodgers. And if they do, I'm hoping to ride that to 100K.
Someone says their favorite shortstop on FanDuel is Nick Ahmed, who is at 2,400.
Nick Ahmed, man. 2,400. That's a good price. So he's batting seventh. He's got a decent power. I just don't understand really why he would be kind of the guy that's jumping out given his lineup spot and also the matchup. So maybe that'd be a contrarian take.
Is there a pitcher you're kind of rooting against tonight not to do well?
Well, I actually am just finishing up my DraftKings lineup, so I can tell you really in a second here. I see I'm not getting I'm getting a lot of Bieber, a lot of Lament. That's my most common combination. So I guess I'm just hoping that Kershaw has a rough
night. Another player that's coming up for me in crunches is actually Austin Slater, who's batting leadoff for the Giants.
Interesting, yeah. Let me pull up his stats here. So the Giants have a decent projection today of 4.8 runs. Austin Slater, he's had a 32% ISO so far this year. Being on base more than a third of the time. So he's been off the charts. But his BABIP has been 40% compared to a league average of 28%. So what that tells me is that Slater has been generating these results by putting a lot more balls into play than he should. So I don't think we can count on him being like a stud, but he is priced really well, so he's a good play.
Just decided to look. It does not appear that the Angels have released their lineup yet. So I mean, it would expect that to come down here At any moment with that lineup coming down here, as we're just about 4 minutes here before the first game is going to start. Obviously something we have mentioned a lot about this game in San Francisco is the weather. With that wind going out to center field right now, listed 18 miles an hour, may ends up being 15 miles an hour. Another number's been mentioned. And I know a lot of people have been mentioning about, kind of the fences being moved in there in San Francisco as well. But it's obviously a game that, maybe more times than not, people may not look at necessarily owning that game because of the park. But with the wind and the changes there to the park, maybe it's something we have to.
Yeah, it's certainly not a bad spot tonight. I mean, the over-under of 9 is encouraging. Wind, it's not the biggest factor in most baseball stadiums, just offhand, I think San Francisco is usually a pretty windy place, so I would make sure not to overreact to that maybe.
In terms of as we kind of start to kind of wrap up here for MLB Live Before Lock, maybe is there something is there a later game that's definitely going to be on your TV that you're really maybe it's because you just got a lot of players in those games?
Yeah, I mean, watching Lament is going to be huge because he's kind of that guy we're all banking on tonight. So the Padres bats too, maybe they're one of the sneaky stacks. So I think that Padres game could be a good one.
I have a feeling on my MLB.TV, the Padres game is going to be a core of what's going to be up on. Usually when I got that up here in my office, I've got the four games going at one time, and nice. You can have it where you got 3 on one side and then one's big in the middle. I have a feeling the Padres game is going to be the game that I'm probably going to be watching the most, just because of Lament being in a good amount of my lineups.
Nice, man. Do you have your TV mounted?
Oh, yeah.
I found that actually makes it a lot better. So,
yeah. So, my TV in the living room is mounted, but here in my office, so I've got a TV to the right. Right now, I'm watching my Magic just get pummeled. Not really surprising. And then I've got three different computer monitors, so I can kind of monitor everything that's going on.
Nice, man. Who's your highest exposed players tonight?
It's actually Rafael Divers. He's nice, the guy that I'm really liking him in this spot. I've got a lot of Lament. I do got a fair amount of Shane Bieber as well. I just, it's a situation where he's got that high potential, and I'm scared that if I don't have a good amount of shares of him, he's going to go off for 40 points.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the FOMO in baseball, and he's probably one of the top options today, numbers. So definitely you gotta feel comfortable with in lineups.
Of course, we're about to hit game time here for the first game of MLB. Just to let you know, coming up here in 25 minutes from now, I will be joined by Pete Rogers Jr. to break down the UFC slate coming up on Saturday night. Also, coming up here later tonight, myself and Adam will have the MLB Early Bird podcast for tomorrow's slate of MLB action. Have you already started kind of looking at tomorrow's action already? Because I was a little earlier.
Nice, man. What do we have in the pipeline here?
Let me. I gotta find my old sheet here that I had. A lot of papers here, Alex. Nice. Probably one of the matchups I'll be interested in is. Man, I don't like him going up against the Dodgers. John Gray is definitely something I'm going to be kind of looking at tomorrow. We got a couple of matchups where we don't have the pitchers involved there and who's exactly going to go there. But I have a feeling Rockies-Dodgers might be a game that has my attention tomorrow night.
Nice. That sounds like a good one for sure.
So, yeah, we'll look forward to that. Of course, rosters have locked. Of course, as always, we appreciate everyone that checks out all the content here at Awesemo.com, Awesemo YouTube channel. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know exactly every time that a video is up here at Awesemo.com. So that's going to wrap it up for MLB Live Before Lock here for Thursday, August the 20th.